everyone, it's Sharona from Payer Waits, and today I'm going to be reviewing Lovecraft Country, Episode 9, Rewind 1921. You guys, I can't believe after this week, we literally only have one more episode of Lovecraft Country. So, this makes me really sad because I feel like it's only going to be one season. I know a lot of people were hoping that this would be some type of anthology series where, this season we focused on Lovecraft Country, maybe turn it into something else next season. I'm here for that, but I truly think this is going to be a one and done for the season. But let's go ahead and get into this week's episode of Rewind 21. So we picked up from last week's episode. We saw at the end of the episode where Montrose is holding Dee. Dee is fighting against something. He can't see the little demon twins, but we see the demon twin had actually uploaded, child, like it's a computer program or something. Basically curse her with a spell. Curse her with a spell that basically you saw the veins and the dark magic that was going into her. So as the episode opens up this week, we see that her arm is not even an arm. It looked like it was a skeleton of what used to be an arm at one point in time. And so what had me confused though, why everybody is sitting here over Dee, who literally is dying before their eyes, is everyone trying to place blame on other people. And when Ruby had the nerve to be like, let's not place blame on anyone. This is all of your faults. I said, Ruby, you was with your little white boo across town when you was supposed to be helping watch Dee as well. So I'm just a little confused as to why you're not included with all y'all trash. All of y'all are terrible babysitters, okay? I wouldn't even let y'all watch a stack of money for me, okay? Because clearly y'all can't keep nothing in sight and keep up with anything. And especially with the secrets that Letty and Atticus have amongst one another. Y'all all trash. I can't trust none of y'all to watch nothing, okay? So I was just really confused at that part of the episode. I was just like, wow, so you just gonna act like you ain't a part of the blame either? I mean, it's equally all of the adults in the room have something to do with the state that Dee is at this point in time. And so Atticus wants to call Christina because they have to figure out how to get the spell out of her or whatever curse of something that has happened to her. And so, he says, hey, I'm just going to offer the pages to Titus. And I was just like, do you ever think before you do stuff? You just be like, hey, let me give the devil the key ingredient for the master plan. But Letty tried to tell him don't do it because guess what? Letty already gave the pages to Christina for the invulnerability spell, the Mark of Cain that she gave her in last week's episode to protect herself and her unborn child. So Letty ends up telling Atticus what she did, and then Montrose he got a little froggy. He tried to leap at her. I said, wow, Montrose, so you gonna put your hands on a woman? What would you do? And why was you trying to get into Letty's face? Especially after the fact that you know that Letty is carrying your grandchild, your grandson. So I was just really confused. I'm glad that Ruby got Buck and Atticus went in and diffused the situation. But I don't even understand how we got to the situation in the first place. I was like, Montrose, don't do that, okay? Montrose got on my nerves a lot in this episode, but it's okay. We're going to get into it. I know y'all going to be like, Sharona, you trash. He has such a heartfelt episode, but that doesn't take away from the fact that Montrose is still trash as well. He had a horrible upbringing. I understand that, but I'll get into it a little bit further once we get to his little portion of this week's episode. But we see that Ruby says that she'll help Dee. She'll go to her raggedy white queen, Christina, and basically asks her to do the spell. So Christina comes over, and then she's like, I can't do this without the book of names, which is sealed to Captain Lancaster. Then they kind of fill her in with the info from what we saw at the end of last week's episode with the little slaw gift or whatever it's called, the little demon thing with the eyes, basically tore him to pieces. So she basically says hey, she will perform the spell to reset the curse cycle so it could kind of start all over again. However, she's going to end up dying unless you guys can figure out something else at this point in time. However, there is a caveat that she gives to Atticus where she tells him, hey, like, you need to come willingly to the equinox, you know, when it's time to happen. And then he basically agreed, because what else were we going to do at this point in time? We need to save D. So we got to worry about the little devil white lady later and figure out how to help save D at all costs. So they need the blood of D's closest relative for the spell. So they say, hey, my trust is up to you. Because Hippolyta is still missing. I'm like, yeah, it's been like 2 weeks. We ain't going to get Hippolyta back. It's only one more episode. What y'all finna do? So we see that it's up to Montrose. Montrose is sitting there. He's taking a swig of moonshine because obviously he knows that he wasn't technically the closest of these relatives. So he's taking a swig of moonshine. Then Tick walk in like, bruh, what are you doing? Like, of all the days to be doing this, we got work to do. So he takes a swig of it first though, and almost like, I guess he almost burnt his little throat because he didn't realize, I think that was moonshine. Because only something like moonshine ain't gonna say taste like gasoline, and they send up there drinking it and put in a little mason jar. So he's reminiscing about George. Montrose is talking about how the spell might not work, and then he just tells him randomly like, hey, you know, George, your dad. I was like, sir, you don't feel like you should have did that in a different way? Ease him into it, picked a good moment to do it, just be like, oh, hey boy, like, you know, George, your daddy, he might be your daddy. What? I was like, Montrose, like, we could have did that a little bit better. Like, could have did that just a little bit better. But I do want to give a shout out to Jonathan Majors, who does some fantastic, he has some really great scenes this episode. But most specifically, you know, when he was like, all the times I sat in that seat, hiding out from one of your whoopings, hoping that he was my dad. And you mean to tell me like he was my dad the whole time, but he can't even get all of the words out of his mouth as he's fighting back the tears. And then Letty comes in like Christina here. And then out of all of that, then Hippolyta walks in like she ain't been gone 2 weeks, 200 years, talking about, oh, is decent? Man, what? Where you been? Where have you been? Hippolyta really just walked in like she wasn't gone for 2 whole centuries. Like 2 whole weeks was 2 whole weeks, like in our book. And just gonna come like, oh, it's decent? Beach, where you been? Where have you? I literally yelled at the screen. As soon as Hippolyta walked in and said, it's decent, I literally yelled at the screen, Beach, where you been? Like, where have you been? Okay? She eventually tells us that she has been gone for 200 centuries, but I was still just like, you don't want to send a postcard? You couldn't travel back in time, leave something on the refrigerator like, hey guys, out traveling for a little bit. Be back in a couple of days, 200 years. Just a couple of days for you guys. I was just really confused by that. I don't know if anybody else was really taken aback when Hippolyta just randomly popped in. I was just like, okay, wow. I'm gonna let that go. Is what it is. But so we see that she ends up helping with this little curse thing. How would you feel to come back though? You've been gone for 200 years at this point. You've been traveling the world, okay? You've been traveling to, what is it, Earth 2058 or 508, whichever multiverse. She did confirm that there is a multiverse in Lovecraft Country. So, but how would you feel to come back and then you see your child looking like a little demon twin? When they came back to the scene when Christina cut Hippolyta's hand for the blood, I was like, well, that escalated quickly. Like, she literally turned into one of the evil demon twins. I know they got real names, but they're going to be the evil demon twins to me. So do not come into my comment section talking about Sharonda. That's not their names. I don't care. They're evil demon twins to me. Thanks. So she ends up doing a spell, gets a little maggots and stuff, the death up out of her, and then Dee looks better, but you can still tell that she's very ill. Hippolyta's like, hey, we got to go get that baby, put her in my trunk. We where are you going? And she was just like, we only have 24 hours before this happens all over again. So, we're going to go to the observatory and I'm going to go back in time and I'm going to heal my daughter. We're going to get the book of names, do what we need to do and get my daughter right. I said, you know what, Hippolyta, I'm totally there for you. I was totally here for this. But we see when she's basically saying that she wants to go back in time and save her. And they try to act like, girl, you crazy, this and that. And I'm just like, but none of your bright ideas have worked this whole season. So I'm just like, I think it's time for us to really trust Hippolyta on this one. But when she told them that she was gone for 200 years and she knows everything, so get in the effing car, I said, thank you. Tell them. Because they're like, well, the key is gone. Beach, I got my own key. You saw she still had the little things that the lady gave her in the episode 7. So I was just like, okay, girl, you better come and save the day. Thank you, Hippolyta. Because these little kids over here, yes, they're little kids because they can't even watch a kid. They just not getting the job done. So I was really here for that. So we know that they have to go back into time and go back to 1921 Tulsa. But before we get into that portion of it, I do want to talk a little bit about Christina and Ruby. So Christina said that she had to handle a personal matter, which is going to Captain Lancaster, who we see is exploding nipples. I was not ready for that. Never once did I think, oh, when I'm watching this week's episode, I'm just going to see some exploding nipples. But we just have a moment of silence for how smooth William walked into the door. I mean, my man's walked in real smooth, like, hey y'all, how y'all doing? I see you dying over there. Guess what? Let me show you why you're dying. So the rock was basically put in place. The rock that she had Ruby put in place in episode 5 was basically to stop Lancaster from being able to regenerate. So now we understand why he had the black skin on his chest. When he gets wounded, he can swap out a body part. And in this case, they were stealing black men. Okay, once again, probably black boys as well. Who knows with them? Kind of reminiscent to what we knew from when they were stealing black people from the South Side to do experiments on. They were stealing, you saw the person's dead body chopped up, them trying to piece him back together in order to bring Captain Lancaster back to life. And then I was like, wow, Lancaster, you gonna sit up there and be like, please, after all that smack you talk against Christina and kill William, her lover? I was just like, the nerve. I guess he felt like at this point, I don't have anything else to lose, so might as well try. But I was I'm not going to say happy because I'm trying to be the better person, trying to be a better Christian. The flesh sin inside of me was happy that he was dying before William / Christina's eyes, and the fact that, you know, he was like, I want you to die 1,000 deaths. Like, that is what she wanted the punishment to be for Lancaster killing William. Even as we see his little henchman saying, I thought we killed you. But Lancaster ends up dying. And so I was just happy. I was happy the flesh side, the center side of me was happy that he died, because justice for William, even though I'm sure William probably wouldn't have been ish either if he was still alive to tell the tale. But we see that Ruby ends up having a conversation with Letty. So after Christina Hill's Dee, Letty basically says, like, you know, you can't trust her, right? And then she was like, and I could trust your broke boyfriend, Atticus. She didn't say all of that, but that's what she should have said, because she didn't say it every other episode. I wonder if he had a job, would Ruby dislike Atticus as much as she does? I don't know, but we see that she tries to tell Letty that she is being just like their mother and, you know, falling in and out of love with these men, disrupting, like uprooting her life. It's just not worth it. And so she basically says, like, you do realize if she asks Tick to come willingly, that she is going to kill Tick to do her spell on the equinox. So when they go back to the house, she asks who Dale was, and Christina tells her, like, the story of Raggedy Dale and how Letty was the reason why she was in a coma. And Ruby had, like, a little smirk, like, go ahead, Letty. I know that's what she was thinking, because that's what we was thinking, too, when she said it. But she basically says that she asked her about the whole thing with Tick, right? And she was like, did you help Dee to help her for me, or did you help her because you knew you were going to be able to ask for the book of names? And she was like, no, I came to help them for you. However, I saw an opportunity and I took that opportunity, so there's nothing wrong with that. But then she said that she ended up admitting that she needs all of Tick's blood to become immortal. And Ruby was just like, well, just promise me you don't hurt my sister. I was like, girl, you gonna kill her baby daddy? Like, you just gonna make her be a single mother? Because are you gonna help raise her son? I was just really confused by that. I don't know why she has all this, like, hate and animosity towards Atticus, but I was just like, to make your sister like this single mother, like a pseudo widow, because I don't know if they were in a relationship. I don't know what they doing, child. But I just felt like that was a bit much. And then she also makes a weird comment saying that, you know, when I imagined being a white woman, I thought I would be a redhead. So are they going to be like the Bonnie and Clyde body snatchers? Because I think Christina alludes to the point that they can only change into these people for so long until they don't have any blood left. So then they would have to find new bodies. So I was just like, so y'all just going to keep finding new bodies? And then I was like, Ruby, you're not going to negotiate for your own immortality on top of that? I was just confused by all of this. I'm like, Ruby, want more for yourself, sis. That's all I'm saying. However, that's besides the point. So, ladies and gentlemen, we're going back into time this week. So we see that after it's a lot that's happening with them, they end up going back to the observatory and they end up fixing everything. And we see that there's this conversation that Letty has with Montrose. And this is after Montrose has chugged the whole thing of moonshine, which he should be like legally dead, chugging that whole thing of moonshine. I'm just saying, y'all knew it to be true too. He should be dead from drinking all of that gasoline. But we see that they're having this conversation and Letty's trying to tell him like why she did what she did, right? She doesn't want him to think that she just made this spur of the moment decision or is being selfish and didn't take Atticus's and like his goodwill, into consideration before making a deal with the devil, right? And so he basically tells her like, hey, I know you're pregnant. She's like, how you know? Ruby told you? No, your man told me. And then she looking like, why he didn't tell me? I'm looking like, well, why you didn't tell him? I don't even know why this is a secret because everybody in the room noticed you pregnant at this point. I was just highly confused. But one of the things that I find interesting is he told Letty that by handing over the pages to Christina, you may have had a hand in killing my son. And that doesn't really sit right with Letty because that wasn't her intention. Her intention literally was going in and saving him. However, she had to think about her unborn child. And while I felt like Montrose, okay, well, it was a great line that they wrote for that. But I was like, sir, he's the future. And as we've seen throughout the course of this entire season and episode specifically, how the present had to sacrifice their lives in order to ensure the fate and the possibilities for their future generations. And so I just felt that it was really selfish seeing Montrose say that to her. I just thought it was disrespectful, but hey, he's always disrespectful, so what's new? But we see that they end up going back into 1921. And I do want to set people up with the expectations. I can't assume that everybody knows what the Tulsa massacre, or they call it the Tulsa riots, what that was necessarily about. So this happened during Memorial Day weekend in 1921. And there is the 19-year-old Dick Rowland, who we heard mentioned throughout the course of the episode. He was a shoe shiner. He was accused of sexually assaulting Sarah Page, who was a 17-year-old white elevator operator. And basically they arrested him. They ran this page in the front page of the newspaper, basically saying that he was charged. And then initially, just all hell broke loose, right? So the white people of Tulsa, because all of the black residents of Tulsa, they were segregated into a city, a neighborhood called Greenwood, right? It was very segregated in Tulsa. Black people had their own spot. And this is during the time where we had a thriving business district, which people referred to as the Black Wall Street. So during this weekend, these white town people of Tulsa got all their people together, torched houses, looted businesses, literally just demolished this thriving black city in Oklahoma. And, it wasn't until in recent years that they've even talked about this, that they've even taught it in schools. They tried to hide the records behind it. They tried to hide how many casualties were in the Tulsa massacre. And really it was these white residents who just got away with killing all these black families, looting all of their businesses, killing these bright minds of Black Wall Street, right? So literally terrible thing that's happened. If you guys do not know about Tulsa, I really do encourage you to read up on it. But I think that even in the end of the episode, when we see Montrose looking at this burning city, you can see the pain in his eyes, the tears coming out of them, to really watch these people get away with burning an entire city. When we talk about the protests and the looting and all of these things, and we see that this is in our DNA as a country, this is why people get upset, right? And so I'm gonna get off my soapbox, but I just need you guys to really do your research and really educate yourselves about some of these big atrocities that, history has tried to cover up. So they go back into time and we get a little more insight into Montrose, right? So Montrose is really going through some PTSD at this point in time, not only with everything that he witnessed in the Tulsa massacre, but also too, he's going through these memories of his father. And so we see as they go back into time, we see that Letty is actually in the red dress from the dream she had when she was on fire, which we see was a premonition, not what we thought it was going to be about, but it came to fruition, okay, one way or another. So we see that they basically have this plan. They have to go get the book of names out of Dora's family's house, but in order to do that, they have to make sure they do not do anything to upset the timeline. Everything must happen the way that it has happened already. You cannot change anything. You can't come into contact with anyone that will mess things up. You have to do what you got to do because we are in multiverses now. This is like some sticky territory. So we see that they actually end up running into Montrose getting beat by his father, which was a lie. William Catlett also too. It was nice to see him. Not happy to see him beating his son, but it was nice to see him. If you don't know, he was in Charm City Kings, which just came out this past weekend, and also too, he's on Black Lightning and Love Is and Black Boy Joe. It's so much stuff, you guys. It's a lot of stuff that he is in, but it was nice to see him. So we see that before they get to the house and kind of see all of this beating that takes place, Tick realizes that he's drunk. He realizes that Montrose is drunk, and then basically another great scene, some great acting. I was getting some Denzel vibes, especially when he did his fingers like this. Y'all know the little Denzel thing, like when he started talking, he get his fingers going. But he basically tells them, like, after this, like, I'm done with you because you're not even my daddy, okay? So I really don't have to deal with you. Like, I was dealing with you before because you was my raggedy daddy. We were blood, but now that I know that we are not related in that way, I don't want anything else to do with you. And so I find it interesting that we see these two generations, right? We see Montrose having to relive some of the worst times of his life, and we see Atticus really looking into his own life, but seeing that this is where his father has learned the pain that he inflicted upon him as a child growing up. And so it's interesting that Montrose, even after all of this, he still blames himself. It said that he deserved to be beat. His dad finds him playing with a flower in his hair, playing with George's prom jacket. And that even after all of this, we just had an episode with him finally accepting like who he, like being comfortable with who he is. And then we go right back to he's blaming himself. Like, I brought this upon myself. It was my fault that I went through all of this. And so I'm glad that Letty told him, like, no one deserved to go through what you went through. And I like how we get to see the Dora protects him and stops him. And then Montrose's daddy was going to hit her, and her daddy had to show up like, I wish you would do something, okay? But I do like that Dora scolds George for not sticking up for his brother. I think it's really important to remind people that when people are being bullied in any way, shape, or form, where it's friends, family, that you have to be an ally. You have to be able to stop it when it's happening. And if this young girl had all the courage to go against this grown man and stop him from beating on his son, like, everybody needs to be able to do that. So I was really happy that Dora scolded George for not taking up for his brother. But I also love how Montrose talked about how his brother was always there for him and how he really helped him through a lot of trying times. But when we see that Atticus gets emotional when he sees his mother, it almost is just a heartwarming moment until we realize that Montrose had ran away. So they have to split up. Letty has to go to Dora's house to get the book of names. Atticus has to go and basically figure out where his raggedy daddy went because he thinks that he's going to go and try to save Uncle George. But plot twist, we realize that Montrose actually went to save Thomas, which is a young boy, one of the first young men that he had feelings for. And it was at this moment that he saw his friend be shot in the head during the massacre. But before that, he called him the F word, because I do not like repeating that word. I think it's a terrible word to be used. And basically, Montrose has some really great lines in this episode. And so there's this conversation that they have, and then he basically tells him that he's telling Atticus, because Atticus is getting frustrated because he's like, you're going to mess up the timeline. You can erase me. You can erase my son. Like, you need to think before you do these things. And he tells him that Thomas was just the first on the list of sacrifices that I made to be your father, to hide who I truly was, to try to forget this other life, these feelings that I have on the inside, but also to cut the soft parts of himself in order for him to be a man. That somehow loving who you want to love, being who you want to be will make you less than a man. And that's really this, he was been brainwashed by his father growing up, by society. And it really hurt to hear him say those things. But then when he says, like, the only thing that I ever wanted was to be your father, I thought it was nice, because I was like, I can't believe you just said this to Atticus. And even he was looking crazy for a moment, like, wow, so you gonna sit up here and disrupt the whole, like, multiverse over this? But we see that he ends up telling him that it was a mysterious man that saved Dora, George, and Montrose from actually being killed. And we hear the verbiage of what he says, that the man said, and Atticus immediately knows it's the same verbiage that we heard in the opening scene of the series itself, and that he actually came from the future. Is always meant to be this way, that he would come from the future to help protect them, and he beat the brakes off them little racist people. I'm sorry, I got really into that, but however, yes. But while all of this is happening, Letty has her own job to go and get the book of names, right? So she ends up encountering the white mob. They shoot at her, but she's invulnerable. And for a moment, I thought that her invulnerability went away because she traveled back into time, but it was still intact. And we see that she ends up getting the book of names from one of Dora's relatives. It was very hard to watch her relative die, because they did burn their family alive. We kind of foreshadowed that entire event when Montrose tells them what happened to Dora's family. But I think it's really important that they do. I don't always agree with being shown black pain, but I think people, for a moment in history that has, like, been not even talked of until recent years, I think it's important to show how violent things had got, like, during that massacre for those 3 days over that weekend. So we see that she ends up reading Jeremiah 29:11. For I know the things that, for I know, child, I'm finna get my Christian card revoked from my mama, because Lord knows I should know this. For I know the plans that I have for you, declares the Lord, plans to prosper you and not harm to you, plans to give you hope in the future. And so I think that verse is really going into this theme of protecting future generations. Tick knows that he has to give his life in order to make sure that his son's life comes into the world, just as Dora's or Atticus's long lost cousin knows that she has to give her life in order for her future generations to have purpose, right? And so it's just a reminder that God has a plan for all of our lives. And this verse is just a reminder to that, right? Also, too, is a great verse to bring the new year into, like, or the last day before the new year is a great verse to kind of study and go by. But as they're praying together, they're doing the Lord's Prayer. We hear a poem by Sonia Sanchez, who is a poet, an activist, a playwright, and she was also an editor and a teacher. And the poem that you actually hear is called Catch the Fire. So I think it was really great to have that voiceover happen as we see Letty staying with them and staying with them until, unfortunately, they are burned alive and pass away. And I'm sure that was very hard for her, but also to ring it true to the premonition that we saw with her in that dress in one of the episodes before. So we see that something interesting happens to Hippolyta. So they're waiting for everyone to come back. She's overloading. The motherboard is overloading, and Tick goes back. But we see Montrose is waiting for Letty to get back. And then Letty has this really cool scene that would have been really, really cool to watch had, like, Hippolyta not been overloading, getting her hair turned blue, foaming at the mouth. I thought it would have been really cool to watch that. But I was like, Letty, can you run, girl? I know that you gave us another stunning track performance as she was running away from them people shooting at her. I said, girl, if you weren't such a great actress, I will tell you, Journey, that you need to be on the Olympic track team, because the way that you move and the form that you have as you are running, I was here for it. But this is the time where I actually need you to do your little track performance and run to get back through this portal so Hippolyta can stop overloading herself. I was just so confused. I was like, I know that this is supposed to be a powerful scene and I'm feeling it. But girl, hurry up your raggedy behind on. We sitting up here been waiting on your behind to get back. Get it together. So we see that she ends up overloading, but Tick, Montrose, after he has this monologue where he kind of talks about everything that happened that night, the first night of the riots. And later, after all of this happened, the charges against the young child, Dick, were completely thrown out because it wasn't true. And all of this craziness happened for nothing. which is just even more unfortunate. But overall for me, there was a lot happening in this episode, but I don't think that it was a lot happening for the plot to necessarily go forward, right? The only thing that truly happened was Tick agreeing to come willingly to help her do her little spell for immortality, and then also too with them getting the book of names for Diana. But it feels like there's a lot that they're gonna have to sum up for this finale next week, so I really don't know how they're going to do it. I'm happy that we got answers in regards to Captain Lancaster, because I really didn't think we were going to get any explanation behind that, but I'm very interested to see how they're going to wrap all of this up in such a short amount of time. But I mean, overall for me, the performances from Michael K. Williams, fantastic. To see his character go through this grief, to experience grief all over again, to experience one of the scariest nights of his life for multiple reasons, right? And to see this revolving cycle of violence against your children that I hope comes to an end when Atticus, if he's still alive, is able to raise George Freeman. But I thought that was great performance from Michael. I think it was great performances from Letty. I mean, Journey had her moments, you know, in this episode. Also, too, with Jonathan Majors. Even though, guys, it's been 2 weeks and I ain't seen nothing. No skin, no glutes, no triceps. I did see some triceps and biceps. And I do want to say that blue shirt did look beautiful and glorious on Jonathan. I was just like, who knew that blue would be my new favorite color? I don't understand why this man is so beautiful to me, but he is a blessing. He is a blessing to look at too. But overall, I do think that there were great performances in this episode. I do think this kind of almost suffers from what we saw, maybe not as bad as the previous week, with a lot happening and not enough that is necessarily making the story go forward. But I'm very interested to see what happens with the season finale. There's so much to tie up in one more hour of television. I don't know how they're going to do it, but I know if anyone can do it, this cast, in front of and behind the camera, I know that they will be capable of doing it. But please let me know what you thought about this week's episode of Lovecraft Country in the comment section below. But those are my thoughts on Lovecraft Country episode 9, Rewind 1921. As always, my name is Sharana from Para Waits, and if you like what you saw today, make sure you hit the like button, hit subscribe, share this video with your friends, and make sure you hit the notification bell. And I love you guys 3000, and until I see you again, bye.